And I think that's the thing with a memoir. We've probably all got, if we're going to write memoirs at all, we've probably got more than one in us, because life is very long. It's got loads of stories, and your memoir is not, I was born all the way through to now. Certain kinds of people do write books like that, and they're people who are famous, and people are interested in the entire spectrum, how they got from dot to all the way to the end, actually, if possible. But memoirs are different. They tend to pick one particular subject, one episode. We've all got lots of stories and seasons in us, I think.
Welcome to the Stark Reflections on Writing and Publishing podcast. There has never been a better time for writers. More information, options, and opportunities are available to you, but navigating these requires insight. Join Mark Leslie Lefebvre as he draws upon more than a quarter century of experience as a writer, a bookseller, and a trusted book industry consultant to explore and reflect on the writing and publishing landscape to help you make informed choices on your writer journey.
Hello, Reflectives, and welcome to episode 464 of the Stark Reflections podcast. This is your host, Mark Leslie Lefebvre. Today's episode, I have an interview with Roz Morris. Roz Morris is a novelist, a memoirist, and professional story whisperer. She's the author of acclaimed literary novels with big emotional canvases and memoirs that find meaning in unadventures. She's also a developmental editor and writing coach, and Roz has helped shape books that have sold more than 4 million copies, some of them from behind the scenes as a ghostwriter. She's also the creator of the Nail Your Novel series for writers and the blog of the same name. She has judged literary prizes, including the Amazon Kindle Storyteller Award and Vine Leaves Press New Voices competition, and Roz has taught masterclasses for The Guardian in London and Jane Friedman's online academy. We talk about her writing life, her latest book, Turn Right at the Rainbow, which has just been released the day before this podcast episode drops, and the journey she took starting to write memoirs. All of that and more, and that's coming up later in this episode. But first, let's hear a word about this episode's sponsor. This episode is sponsored by Manuscript Report. You wrote the book, now you've got to market it. Oh, and I know a lot of authors who find that second part even harder than all of the writing itself. And I get it, because after more than 30 years in this industry and more than 40 years writing, I've suffered it myself, and I've watched countless talented writers stare at this blank screen, paralyzed by the question, how the heck do I even describe my own book? And that is where Manuscript Report comes in. And it's a tool I've been using myself for, I think, a year now, maybe longer. I've lost track of time since the pandemic. But what I haven't lost track of is how effective Manuscript Report can be. You upload your manuscript, and within minutes, not days, not weeks, you get a comprehensive marketing report. Now, I'm talking about blurbs and synopses and sales pitches and comparable titles and keywords and target audience insights, KDP categories, and even ready-to-use ad copy and press release. Well, not ready to use, pretty close to ready to use, because I usually still adapt it myself. I am the human controlling this after all. But I still remember the first time I ran one of my books through it, Canadian Werewolf in New York. I was genuinely surprised by some of the comp titles and audience angles that had surfaced. Pitches I hadn't considered, such as The Dresden Files meets The Hangover. Never had thought of it, and it works beautifully, because Manuscript Report gave me a fresh perspective on my own work. This is the kind of analysis that took endless amounts of time or hundreds of dollars in consulting fees, etc. Now it takes minutes and costs a fraction of that. So for authors who are trying to compete in a crowded marketplace, this becomes a game changer. And if you want to launch your book with confidence, or take a backlist book like I did, with the Canadian Werewolf in New York that's celebrating its 10th anniversary this year. And it was just in the last year that I discovered this new catchphrase. You can kind of reimagine it, remarket it. You can stop agonizing over the blurbs, over a lot of the marketing elements and placement in the marketplace, and check out manuscriptreport.com. And don't forget to use my code MARK10 to save 10% off your port. That's MARK10, and save 10% off at manuscriptreport.com. Okay, comments from recent episodes. Episode 463, How to Bring Your Book Alive at an Author Event with Julie Heiner. Edwin Downward said, I honestly don't know what kind of book-related themes I could aim for in terms of setting up an event. Though maybe there is one. I do a lot of my writing in a certain local tea shop and used bookstore. 2 of my 3 published novels, and the one now in edits, were all written and edited in part at this shop. Perhaps I could build an event around a see where all the hard work got done theme. Edwin, that's exactly the kind of creative energy to use for those books. There's a story behind it. It's the old, George Washington slept here. Edwin Downward wrote this book here. There could be some sort of fun marketing element related to that, and I think you should keep pursuing it. And I'm so glad that Julie inspired you with that. For episode 461, The Power of Stories to Instill Empathy, Resilience, Joy, and Hope with Kai Esso on YouTube, JB Mosley said, highly enjoyable interview. I strongly agree. I love chatting with Joey. And Sylvie said, I'm sorry, Joey, I know Kai as Joey, and I've known her as Joey longer, so I defaulted to the name I've always called her. But the book, of course, is published under Kai Esso. Anyways, other comment is Sylvie Soul said, in response to my personal update, Con Crud takes no prisoners. And that is so true. And I'm going to inject a little bit of a personal update in my response to that, Sylvie. I am doing this with my own voice, not the 11 Labs voice. But as you can tell, my voice is getting more and more raw. I'm actually cutting out. I'm stopping to clear my throat and cough and get my voice back to normal every once in a while. So you may notice that my voice goes from this rough voice that you're hearing now to a slightly cleaner voice because I just cut out a really annoying and terrible throat clearing and cough. But yeah, I mean, come on. February 11th is when I started to come down with it. It is now March 6th as I'm recording this. And oh my God, I am on antibiotics again and it's coming back. So woo, this one was a nasty, nasty one. Over at starkreflections.ca, Edwin Downward said, I listened to this the day before I was to attend Vancouver Fan Expo as a vendor, selling my books in my wife's craft booth. And the whole idea of being willing to experiment matched the way I was able to play with different approaches to catch the attention of potential readers. Not quite vigorously scientific, but fun as I got to gauge the reaction of real people as I tried out each variation that came to mind. I guess the latter reflects on the larger advice of this entire podcast, the value of interacting within our community, even if the immediate return doesn't seem to be very positive. Awesome. I love that. So cool that you were inspired by one of my awesome guests and, of course, of the larger advice of this podcast. I'm so glad you were able to put it into practical use so soon after hearing the episode. I want to thank you all for your comments. You can leave comments over where the podcasts drop on YouTube as well as at starkreflections.ca. I really love hearing your thoughts. And honestly, especially when my voice is like this, I need to come up with a viable way for you to send me your voice comments so I don't have to read, especially when my voice is raw and nasty like this. I can hear the comments and everyone else can hear the comments in your voices. So I'm going to try and figure that out in the not too distant future. But that's it for comments. I'm going to play bumper and get into a personal update. Yeah, so let's keep this relatively brief because my voice is just getting more and more raw. But, speaking of comments recently, in my personal life, I have gotten a ton of reads about 1.6K right now. Some restacks and lots of comments for my article, Publishing Wide But Shallow, which I posted on March 2nd on Substack. Now, the concept was my frustration with authors who claim to publish wide but don't do anything different. They just keep marketing on Amazon. They just put their books on the other platforms, but then they don't actually do anything with them. Kind of reminds me of that little red hen fable or the story I remember hearing in public school. It's like everyone wants to eat the bread, but nobody wants to bake the bread. Everyone wants their books to sell on the other platforms, but nobody wants to do anything to sell their books on the other platforms. They just do all the things with Amazon. And yeah, of course, Amazon makes it easy for you to give them a shit ton of money and drop money on ads, on Amazon ads. And most of the other platforms don't have paid ads, but some of them do. And I'll link to the article because you can find out how you can do promotions directly with Kobo and Nook and Google Play, for example, and even the Smashwords store. And speaking of which, this week is Read an eBook Week, and Smashwords has been celebrating it since their inception. Was it 15 years ago? More than 15 years ago? 18 years ago? I don't know. It was Smashwords, and it was Kindle back in the early days. But up until March 7th is a huge sale, and all of my books for writers, by the way, I believe are 75% off. If not, some of them might be 50% off, but they're all at a significant discount if you want to check them out. See, that's one of the ways when you're in a promo, you don't just let the platform do all the work, you share it. And I did share it. I did send out a newsletter to writers with a link to my books on Smashwords, and I did see a small bump the day that I sent it out. So I was like, oh, look, it worked. Actually, trying to promote your books with a coupon code can actually work if you do something. Anyways, that article I think is important. So I'm going to be adapting that article into a short Keno, yeah, the game Keno. Is that a Canadian thing? Do you guys know? Keno? Anyways, I'm going to be adapting it into a short, and this is again one of those goof ups that I'm just leaving in instead of cutting out. But let me go back to this. I'm going to be adapting that article into a short keynote style talk that I'm going to be posting on my YouTube channel. And the audio for it's going to be pushed into my special audio feed for patrons, which is huge. Thanks. And shout out to the folks who support me at patreon.com/darkreflections and my coffee buddies at buymeacoffee.com/Mark Leslie. But I wanted to do this keynote style talk the day I released the post, but I've been waiting for my voice to fully recover to do that. Now I mucked about with doing an audio version of it, and I did create one using my digital 11 Labs voice, but in all honesty, it just didn't come out. There were pieces of it that didn't come out the way I wanted, not with the same passion that I wanted to express. Yes, I'm a big fan of technology and helping save us time and energy and various elements, and the technology is so handy for simple things like when my voice sucks and I just need to use that voice for a brief intro for the podcast, but it's still not effective for the deeper things that we do as creators, those elements of human connection, expression, etc. Now, considering the rawness of my voice and the fact that I've only been talking for a few minutes here, I'm really hoping in the next couple days, maybe over the weekend, I'm really hoping I can record that keynote style talk version of it so I can get that out, the audio version for patrons and the video version available for anyone to watch. Because again, I know that people learn and consume in different ways and they enjoy things in different ways. So I want to take this, I kind of want to take these things and put them out in different ways. I'm kind of leveraging my IP, reduce, reuse, recycle, which I tell authors to do all the time. And I've done with my fiction, but this article, when I go back to Publishing Wide But Shallow, it is based on things I've written about in my books, Wide for the Win and An Author's Guide to Working with Bookstores and a Library and Killing on Kobo and 7 P's of Publishing Success. So it's based on all the things I've already put in my books. It's based on articles I've written for the Alliance of Independent Authors, for different blogs and journals, etc., about writing and publishing. It's based on public posts I've done over the last 10 years or more. And it's based on talks and presentations, probably dozens of talks and presentations that I've done over the years. There's nothing absolutely new in this article. It's a regurgitation of stuff I've written, I've spoken about, I've presented, I've commented over the years. But it's been readapted from all of those different pieces into a concise article. And that's an important reminder for me of, and I got in comments like, oh my God, I never thought of this. I'm like, well, dude, I've been saying this for 15 years. How come nobody's listening to me? But, well, the reality is most people have never heard me. And so I feel like I've been saying something over and over again. And I guess if you're a longtime listener, you're like, oh my God, if Mark says this one more time, it could be a drinking game. But the reality is not everyone's going to hear it. So sometimes it's okay to repeat yourself, particularly when it's something so important. And in that article, Wide But Shallow, I actually wrote on a sticky note on a piece of paper stuck on my wall behind my laptop in my writing area. I think I was in a meeting, probably with the Wide for the Win board, and we were talking about something, and someone made a comment like, publishing wide, but I was like, yeah, but it's wide, but it's shallow. There's no depth to it. They're not doing anything. And so I went, ooh, this is cool. I love this concept. So I just wrote wide but shallow. And I knew one day, and God, this could have been 6 months ago or more that I wrote this down. But I knew that one day I was going to write the article. And on Monday, March 2nd, Sunday, and I was reflecting on it a lot over the weekend. And then Monday morning in my writing session, I sat down and went, okay, I'm going to get this done. I'm going to draw upon a whole bunch of things I've done, and I'm just going to share it. And so this is a reminder that when you share those things that nobody has seen, that is a whole new audience for you, which I think is cool and important for us to remember as writers. And this goes back to a previous post I shared, was it just a few days earlier, where I talked about in a Substack, and again, I'll link to these in the show notes at starkreflections.ca. I shared how I like to do parody writing. I write parody lyrics sometimes as a warm-up exercise, particularly if I can't get into the project. It just gives me something creative to do that's short, sweet, and fun, and it kind of triggers different parts of the brain. And in that article, I shared not only the parody video Liz and I did at the beginning of the pandemic, Stuck in This House Here With You, to the tune of Stuck in the Middle With You from Steelers Wheel. And then I shared a whole bunch of other ones, like I have a parody video from the song Fever, Peggy Lee, Elvis, etc. And I was making fun of the way people pronounce my name. Like La Fever is one of the ones. So it's You Call Me Fever is the parody video. Now, I'm not a great singer. I sing with more passion than talent, but I shared a whole bunch of these things. Even I got my mind set on Wide, to the old 80s, early 90s George Harrison song, I Got My Mind Set on You. And I created that stupid video as a visual parody of the George Harrison, and I even have a little George Harrison thing in the top right. And then me pretending to play the guitar and doing goofy things, trying to look somewhat like a George Harrison as I'm singing I Got My Mind Set on Wide. But it's going to take money, a whole lot of spending money. Anyway, sorry, musical earworms stuck in my head now. But all of these videos, like years ago, I put them out, and it's so hilarious to see that I think it's out there, people have seen it. No, most people in the world have never seen it, so it's okay to share it. And then it's okay when you're out in the world and you're talking about your book. I'm going to share this before, I'm going to reflect on it again, that Bayou's Books in Sudbury, Ontario had this great slogan or mantra back in the day that said, a book you've never read is a new book. And that's the thing to remember. Most people in the world, and I don't care who you are, if you make $100 a year on your books, if you make 6 or 7 figures a year on your books, most people in the world have never read your books and have no idea who you are. Isn't that a great opportunity? That means it's okay to talk about, to share with the right people, with the right potential readers, your amazing books. Okay, I've gone on way too long, particularly given the rawness of my voice. You really want to hear this wonderful chat I had with Roz Morris about memoir and writing and fiction. And in particular, what I loved about this was the big stories, how she loves as she looks for weird adventures in unexpected ways and big stories. The big story of a memorable memoir with Roz Morris, which is, I think, what I'm going to title this episode. You'll know if I've done that or not by the time you hear this. Now you're going to hear the bumper, and then you're going to hear Roz. Hey, Roz. Welcome to the Stark Reflections podcast.
Hi, Mark. It's so nice to be here. I first met you when you were working for Kobo, and it was the London Book Fair, probably 2012, was it?
Yeah, I think it was 2012 was my first London Book Fair, and I think that's when we were launching Kobo Writing Life. What would have been? Yeah. Wow, that seems like just yesterday, but it also seems like a few, I don't know, like a pandemic ago. Stuff like that.
Yeah. Let's not count the years, but yes, I met you in person, and that's an unusual thing to say these days because there are so many people who we get to know from just rubbing along online. So
I know,
and
then I think I can't. Maybe I've seen you only a few times since then in person. Probably at a London Book Fair, maybe at another conference recently. But great to connect again. So for my listeners who are not lucky enough to have met you at London Book Fair or other in-person conferences, Roz Morris, what's her background and how did she get into writing?
Well, shall I tell you, first of all, what I do now? I write a number of different kinds of things. I write literary novels with big stories. I absolutely love story, but I also love deep themes, rich characters, rich settings, stories that seem to thrum with metaphor if you want them, but they're also big stories if all you want to do is find out what happens next.
Right. I like how you say that, big stories, but also has the depth and the richness too, right? Fun stuff.
And that's I think what has always fascinated me. I've always loved a story that takes me to a place like that, and that's why I started writing stories as a kid, as a teenager, and so on. I would always be thinking, I want to do something with that. It's got something in it, that's what I've always felt, always wanted to do, to find out what's there and make other people see it too. So as a storyteller, that's where I'm coming from. And I got there by a rather, is it a circuitous route or a circuitous route? I can never quite know. Because
either or for our listeners, whatever they prefer.
Right. But that's it. If you're a words person, you're more used to seeing them written down, I think, and than saying them out loud. Or they make a sound in your head and all that's fine. But when you come to speak it out loud, you realize someone's got a different version.
Yeah, or you hear the word finally and you go, oh, is that how you pronounce it? I've never.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, but that's how you can tell a reader, right? Someone who's read their whole life, or they've never heard the word out loud, but they've seen it thousands of times.
Yeah.
That is funny. So we'll let comments, just leave your comments and let us how you pronounce that word.
Absolutely.
There you go. But so what was that non-direct route that you took?
The non-direct route was that I worked in a publishing company where I learned all the ways to make books, which turned out to be brilliant for me later on. But I was thinking, I want to write something, I don't know what. And then I met a number of people who also wrote, and I thought, gosh, I'm among people who always have a book on the go. It's just part of their lives, and I loved that. And so I just naturally started writing too. I became part of a universe where that could happen, and it wasn't weird, and you weren't sort of overstepping the mark. And so I just started writing, and I met a writer and married him, which was also rather a good move. But it just happened to get on really well with people who do that, and he was encouraging me to start contacting agents and things, and I was feeling my way. I was writing short stories, and I thought I'd have a go to novel, and then a book he was working on for a publisher sort of had a bit of a problem because he was ghostwriting, and he was writing for a series. There were 12 writers writing at once, and they were all supposed to produce a book that looked like it had been written by the same person. So of course it went wrong, and the publisher came back. Yeah. Just imagine this is how not to write a series all at once with a lot of different people if they're meant to be one person. So he had written this book, and the publisher said, "Oh, can we change this and this and this so it sounds more like the others?" And he didn't have time, but he said to me, "I know you could do this, so just quickly rattle off a book." And I came up with a new plot and new characters, and sent the synopsis off. The publisher said, "Oh, this is nice." They didn't know it was me at the moment, and I wrote it. I wrote this book in 6 weeks. It was a novel. And they said, "Oh, this is exactly what we want." And then we revealed that it was by me, not him. But by then, they'd got what they needed. And if you solve someone's problem, if they've got a deadline, then they're really grateful they've got a new person they can rely on. So after that, I started writing books for other people. And I was writing novels and doing a bit of work on ghostwriting memoirs as well.
Right.
And I was writing as other people, and meanwhile trying to find my way to what I wanted to write as me. And then finally, I got an agent who really liked the novel I was writing as myself, and it was a bit peculiar. It was literary with a big story, but also with a slight sort of speculative fiction aspect, which a lot of people found difficult. And she couldn't place it, but just at that time, the self-publishing revolution was happening, which is when I met you. And I thought, I'm going to self-publish it. And I'd already self-published some books on writing craft, because along the way, I'd been working as an editor. I'd been working for one of the big literary consultancies, because I found I really liked getting someone else's manuscript and figuring out what they wanted to do with it, what they needed to know to make it what they wanted. And so I was doing that too. And I wrote a series of books called Nail Your Novel.
Yes.
And then, it's good you know them.
Yeah, I remember those. Yeah.
Then I had this novel of my own, and I thought, I'm going to see what happens if I put it out. And I did. And people came back and said, "Oh, that was nice, but you like what you do." And so then I became a novel writer, and the kind of novel writer I wanted to be as well. And that was very important, because I'd had my apprenticeship of doing many other kinds of writing, fiction. It was genre fiction, and I wanted to find that particular kind of mystery and depth that spoke to me, and I wanted to put that into my novels, and that's what I did. And I've now got 3 novels. And then the thing happened when I decided to write a memoir, which was very surprising to me.
But you had ghostwritten memoirs before, but so you shifted. You had those first books were the nonfiction stuff, leveraging your expertise to help other writers. Then the novels in that area that you had passion for a long time. Where did this next twist come from? Like the to actually write your own memoirs?
Because well, like all writers, I keep notebooks of things that have happened, and I've got notebooks for different aspects of life. And I had one book. And I should have had it here beside me, but I don't. It's a leather-bound red volume with visitors written on the front of it. It's a visitor's book. So what you're supposed to do is put it in your restaurant, or maybe just in your hall in your house, and people write in it if they've been to visit you. And someone gave me this, and I didn't use it for that, but I used it for notes whenever my husband and I had been away on holiday. I would take this notebook with me, and that was where I would write down notes from the holiday, adventures that had happened.
You as the visitor, it was your journal.
Me as a visitor. Okay. So it's my visitor's book, but when I'm a visitor.
Okay, and I like that.
And I thought, I got it out of the suitcase the first night we were staying in this sort of weird little folly somewhere in the depths of Lincolnshire in the middle of winter, surrounded by snow and fog. And I got it out, and I said, "Oh, here's the time when the car window got stuck down, and we had an argument about what to do, because you can't do anything in a car if one window won't go up."
Right.
And he said to me, "Oh, you should put those in a book." And I said, "Yeah, of course everything will go in a novel someday. You know, these are scenes and characters." And he said, "No, put those in one book by themselves." And I said, "Oh, don't be silly. Nobody wants to read my memoir about where we went on holiday." And then the idea started fermenting. I thought, no, there is a way of making this a series of just fun and weird little adventures in unexpected ways. And in fact, Bill Bryson did that. And he's
Yeah.
very popular for doing that. And we got back home. I mentioned it to a few people, expecting them to say, no, don't be silly. No, you can't do that. And they all said, oh, yes, do that. I'd love to read it. So I had a go, and I found I loved this kind of writing.
And I suspect maybe it's because you're not just having the experience, but you probably your penchant for big story in situations transcends so beautifully to the memoir. You're not just sharing what you did, you're sharing the story of what you did, which is, I think there's a significant difference, right?
I think that's a huge that you've got it absolutely, because what I did was I wrote things down that seemed like big stories in
Yeah.
little places from small beginnings, and just
Big
seemed to
stories in little
have
places from small beginnings. That sounds like
yeah
a
yeah
log
yeah
line or
yeah
something, right?
yeah. But that is what writers do anyway. We find significance in things that others haven't yet looked at or haven't looked at in the same way, and that's what makes us all unique and original.
Right. Yeah. So this book is not quite lost. Travels without a sense of direction. I love that
That's it.
subtitle as well. Okay. So when did this come out?
That was 2017,
Okay.
so
All right.
quite a while
So and
ago.
how long, like how many different travels? Like did you fill up that visitor's book and take the best of, or how did you compile the stories that went into that?
It was like you said. I looked through the whole book, and I found some stories went together naturally because they had a theme. So
Right.
weird things to do in towns out of season when no shops are open, and just
Oh,
stuff
that's
like that.
fun. So it can be used as a tour guide if someone's going through the same area going, "Oh, here's something fun to do."
Yes, yes. And in fact, I did a tour of radio stations, BBC local radio stations. So I took the book in and I said, I've got this story about your area. Did you know you could do this? Or did you know this is here?
Oh, that's so
Um,
cool. What a great way to promote it, because one of the secrets I always talk to writers about is don't make it about you, make it about the area, make it about
mm,
something that other people will resonate with, and often like my town, the town, the area, the village, the whatever is the hero. I'm
yes,
I'm just a
yes.
conduit here, right?
Yeah, I'm just the tour guide. I'm taking you
Yeah,
around there.
yeah.
Yes,
Oh, I
yes.
love that. I love that. That's great. So, but you've been working on, and it's going to be out by the time this episode airs. But you've been working on a second one as well. So, what's the different? Well, tell us what the second one, the name of it, and then the difference or similarities between the two different books.
Well, the second one is called Turn Right at the Rainbow, a diary of house hunting, happenstance, and home.
Ooh, love the alliteration.
Yes, all the H's. And it's the story of what happened when we tried to move house.
Really? Okay. And so is the all the adventures related to that?
Yes, because I felt that it was actually a massive adventure. What we were doing
Okay.
was changing our lives, and we were making a
Yeah.
choice of where the important things in our lives would next happen. And
Okay.
the places that people would come, the place people would come to visit us in, and
Right.
the place where they would have memories, because we've lived in our house for a very long time, about 30 years,
Oh, wow.
and that means people come here and they say, um it hasn't changed, or I remember this, and it's there's a a show by Nigel Neal, the writer of Quatermass. He did a story in the 70s called The Stone Tape. And it's about a house that keeps almost a recording within its walls of the events that happened there. And in his story, they're horrific. But I was very aware of how the house had all this within its structure,
Right.
all our great times, all our private times, all our life changes it had witnessed. And the people who came quite a lot knew that as well. So there's this big sense of changing something cosmic.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. So it's about the place you were in, but then also the leaving it and going to another place?
That's it. Yes. And the search and the way you
Oh,
feel when you
wow.
walk into a place and you think, is this it? Is this going to be it?
Yeah.
And there are bits that bother you, and you think, will those bother me once I've bedded in, or will they not matter at all?
Right.
And also, it's very hard to remember how you saw something for the first time when you were
Yes.
used to
Yeah.
seeing it with very practiced eyes.
Right.
All those experiences.
Oh, that's fascinating. I'm curious about how different was the new place in terms of geography, like location, or even some of the things that you had. I mean, 30 years is not an insignificant time. So I'm
Yeah,
curious about what were those things that were different, that that you had to adjust to or whatever.
things like having a garden. We are not
Okay.
gardeners. And,
So you suddenly
um,
had a garden, and you're
yeah,
talking a flower garden or a vegetable or
just any kind of garden,
okay,
because the house we were moving from had just a patio, which was fine.
right,
In
right,
fact, it had no plants. It was just an outdoor room as far as we were concerned for having
right,
barbecues. That was its purpose.
okay,
But having to tend plants was not really something we particularly wanted to do. But everywhere we saw had got they seemed to be designed for people who wanted to be tending gardens, and that was quite hard to get used to. And these things that you ask yourself, is this going to matter? Really, is it going to matter if the house is brilliant,
yeah,
or is it not going to matter? And you can never quite tell. And there also, I started to examine places I'd come from as well before then. And I
yeah,
realized that the way every one of those places came to me was just from a set of dominoes all falling in the right way.
right.
And yet it turns out to be like your home planet. It's somewhere that is so inextricably part of you, but it might not have been if someone else had seen it before you.
Yeah, oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, that happened. Like the circumstances that led to you actually getting into that place that was actually
Mm,
available at the right time. Yeah.
yeah. And there were houses that we really liked, and we won a bidding war for. There's one we won a bidding war for, and then the seller just decided, no, we're not going to sell after all. And I thought,
Oh,
it only happens. You are where you are right now because someone else let it go.
yeah.
And so there are all these ways in which the universe is moving around you and sort of sending you in different directions. And it's also important. I spoke to a friend who lost a house that she really wanted and got another one, which was just a road further over. But because of that, and because of the age her children were at, they went to a completely different school and ended up with completely different friends who are now their
Oh.
lifelong friends. They wouldn't have met them.
Yeah, I know it's amazing how little things. One of my best friends, just an interesting story, is one of my best friends who I didn't meet until grade seven in elementary school. His parents lived in there was like where I lived, there were different townships. And it wasn't until the grade seven and eight, like the middle school, that kids were bussed in from other schools that only did kindergarten to grade six from these different townships that were, a highway drive apart to you. So it's not like you walk to school.
Mm.
And I remember we became best friends. We stood at each other's weddings, that kind of stuff. I've known him my entire life, or at least since grade seven. And I learned later on that the house across the street from ours, which I remember when the couple that had lived there passed away, and then the house was for sale, and then a new family moved in. His parents had come to see the house and almost got in an accident at this one intersection coming along the highway into town, and that was the reason his father was very, very nervous driver. And it would have been an additional 15-minute drive home. He's like, and because he almost got in an accident going to visit the house, they didn't buy the house. So I probably, because it was across the street from me, I probably
Yeah.
would have been friends with him from about the age of 6 as opposed to the age of 12. So it was almost the case that we became friends just 6 years later. or whatever age we were in grade 7. It was probably 12, 13, 14, somewhere in that realm. And it was almost like interesting that we might never have become friends, but
Mm.
this was a case where I think we would have just been friends a lot earlier because we were so similar. It's so funny
Yeah,
how and that's just circumstance of where your house is, right?
yeah,
The friends are your friends. Well, I'm not allowed to cross the street, so I'm only friends with people who live
yeah.
in the row that I'm on, so I don't have to cross the street when I'm a certain age. That kind of stuff is kind of amazing when you think about it.
Yeah, it really is. It all comes down to this simple thing of which house you're in.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Or where you're sitting in school, right? Even sometimes the population, if it's alphabetical, then you're always sitting with the same people in every grade.
Yeah, yeah. Then that comes down to who your parents married and which
Yeah.
surname they got.
Yeah, all those
um,
things. All right, so that obviously that first experience with the memoir that came out in 2017 was a rich enough experience that you thought, okay, I'm going to approach this again, and in a whole different way. Because
mm,
the first memoir is you and your husband going to places. Now, this is you and your husband living in a place or finding that living place.
yeah.
I love that it's similar, but it's all about place too, isn't it?
Yes, it really is. And I think that's the thing with a memoir. We've probably all got, if we're going to write memoirs at all, we've probably got more than one in us
Oh,
because
for
life
sure.
is
Yeah.
very long. It's got loads of stories,
Yeah.
and your memoir is not. I was born all the way through to now
Yeah,
because that
it's not a
won't.
life biography.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
that certain kinds of people do write books like that, and they're people who are famous, and people are interested in the entire
Yes.
spectrum, how
Yeah.
they got from dot to all the way to the end, actually,
Yeah, yeah.
if possible. But memoirs are different. They tend to pick one particular subject, one episode, and we've all got lots of stories and seasons
Yeah.
in us, I think.
Well, yeah, the memoir is a very specific season, or it's a very specific
Mm.
story, or a very specific chapter in your life, or chapters, right? Because it could be like the theme of the various places we've traveled in 20 years, because that's what
Yes,
ties them
yes.
together. Yeah.
Or you might have a stronger theme than that because just where we went for 20 years, unless those 20 years happen to be a really good envelope for some
Right.
reason,
Yeah, yeah.
then it might work. Otherwise, you might have to look for a better glue to hold it all together.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that idea. Because you get to pick and choose. You get to like for example, in when you were looking at that memoir, that the journal that you were keeping, the visitor's journal, you didn't just take all the stories from that era. You
Mm.
selected the ones. How did you decide what were the strings that tied all those places together or all those different experiences together?
Well, I just had to figure out if anyone else would be interested in it, because
Okay.
there are some things that happen where you think I've written this down because it amused me, but I haven't found the way to cross the bridge into the reader's curiosity about
Okay.
it. So there'll be some things that I put aside because I thought I haven't found the way to make that interesting to someone else. And then there
Right.
are others where they seem to have a bigger point and seem to be telling a bigger story. So that's when that's when I decided to put them in the book. There was one story about in Not Quite Lost about doing a tour of Somerset and the Salisbury kind of area where there are a lot of stone circles and there's a bit of Stonehenge is there and Glastonbury, and we did a tour where a guy drove us around in a van and showed us all these mystical places, and we were a bit skeptical about the mystical stuff because we weren't really believers in all the Arthurian stuff, but he was obviously playing it up for people who were. But then he started talking about how he was having a relationship with a girl who was a reincarnation of, I think it's Nimue. And we got really interested in that because that was his personal life, and that was his take on what was happening to him. So
Right.
I was asking him loads of questions about this, and he was saying, "Oh, but look over there. There's a hill there that looks like the mother goddess." And I was thinking, no, that's just some hills. Tell me more about Nimue. And And so that was interesting, how we were at cross purposes, and how he was trying his best to get us interested in the Arthurian stuff, which he was passionate about. But we
Right.
wanted to see the places, but we didn't really believe that it was all that mystical. But
Right.
as soon as he started talking about this real romantic story that he was experiencing right then and there, we were like piranhas. Just, I want to know more. So there's this interesting mismatch, and this interesting double strand of romance, because we were highly romantic, highly interested in his romance, and he was trying to get us interested in the traditional romance of Arthur, and we weren't interested in that. We wanted his romance. So that's something like that, where you find yourself at cross purposes, and it says something interesting about
Yeah.
people. I was looking for that sort of thing, quite a lot of things about how people are. Another thing that we did was we went to museums out of season. I've already mentioned towns out of season. Museums out of season are great because they're full of volunteers who are lovingly restoring everything. And they spend hours there just polishing an aircraft, and they clearly love it. And you see this love in what they're doing.
Right. Oh, I love that. So amazing. When you talk about cross purposes, I can imagine in the house hunting experience, you probably encounter that because, you're there, there's another couple there, there's other people that are looking at the same space. And that could be someone can come up and go, "Oh my God, what a beautiful garden. I can picture this." And you and your husband are going, "Oh, a garden, eh? Uh, what are we
There's
going to do
that.
with that?"
And the competition as well. They're saying that, and we're thinking, wait a minute, we want it. We want
Yeah.
the rest of it. You aren't allowed to like it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So that you are in a very strange, pressured situation. And that was also interesting because estate agents
Yeah.
knew
Well, and that
exactly how you were feeling.
But I think I remember looking at places in the past and not trying to get too visibly excited for other people to see, so they didn't realize how into it we were. Yeah, this is okay.
Yeah.
Even though you just
Yeah.
think this is the best. Oh
They always
man.
know, the estate
Yeah.
agents know, and there's a sequence in the book where that we've gone for a second viewing, and the estate agent is trying their best to do the hard sell. They were saying, this has got marvelous proximity to schools, which is a very odd sentence in itself.
Yeah.
And we just hate to say, no, children don't need schools. And
Yeah.
so they say, it's very handy for commuting into London. No, you don't need to commute into London. We work from home. And we were thinking, yeah, we've got you. You're not going to get us. And then the third thing he said was, there's been a lot of interest. And we couldn't hide
Oh,
our reaction. It was,
yeah.
oh no, there's been a lot of interest. We might lose it. They knew what buttons to press. They're really clever at
Oh
that.
man, I love that. That is amazing. So I can imagine then. So you've already compiled because this book is at almost across the finish line. I imagine
It's
there are
actually
other.
there.
It's there. I mean,
It is a
it's
book.
it's done. You've got
It's
the early
done.
reader edition, and then it's
Yeah.
coming out in just well, a couple months from when we're talking. What I imagine you already are crafting the next one. You don't need to tell me what it's about, but did the idea for that come while you were still working on this, and you just say, "Oh, putting this aside"?
I got an idea for a very different kind of memoir, and I've been just sort of letting it simmer and
Right.
think about what it wants to be. And I also had another idea for something I might make into a novel. And again, I'm just letting them collect. What I do to start with is I just let the ideas attract things to them like a magnet, see
Right.
what seems to go, and then they sort of build slowly.
Yeah.
um and I think that the kind of memoirs I write are also quite like the novels I write, because the novels have got usually a bit of a weird situation, and it's something that becomes very human
Yeah.
and a very odd and curious journey. And that's what I
Oh,
really like.
oh,
I like
that's
doing it with
cool.
both fact and fiction.
Oh, you sort of already answered the question because I was going to ask, are you ever going to go back to novels? But it sounds like you are. You have that on one of those back burners.
Yes, and I do really like it when I've built a novel to the extent that I'm able to let the characters really express themselves, because I I don't have to stick to a particular truth of what really, really happened.
Right. Yeah.
and I can let them change things. I can let them go their own way. I can let them have feelings that if I was writing about a real person, I couldn't really know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in a novel, I can inhabit a lot of different people. In my last novel, Everest, I'd got about 6 narrators, viewpoint characters. It's not first person. They're all
Yeah.
viewpoint characters. They've all got their own view of what happens. And for each of those, I had to really delve into what it was like to be them. And that took a
Yeah.
lot of sort of head hopping and understanding their situations. And often one didn't like the other, and in an interesting way. So their take on something would be very different from the other person's take. And that's the kind of freedom that you can have in a novel of that kind, particularly because you can explore what it's like to be other people who you aren't.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that. Did you did you have any crossover readers who had read your novels and said, "Oh, a memoir"? Because
I did.
oftentimes, like, "Oh, I like this writer. Let's see where she takes us."
Yes, I'm very grateful that people have taken the chance. I've had people who said to me, "Oh, can't you just do another novel before you do another one of those? Because I really like your novels." And then eventually they'll say, "Okay, I did weaken and read Not Quite Lost, and actually I now love it." So
That's fantastic. What advice would you have for a writer who's only ever done fiction and is looking to move to memoir? Or even vice versa, someone who's only done memoir and is looking to move to fiction.
Ooh, different advice for each.
Yes, of
If
course.
you are moving from memoir to fiction, you have to abandon whatever nuggets of reality it's based on and be prepared to make things up, to change things. Something that I've encountered a lot when working with people who have made a novel out of their own real experiences is that they actually really want to keep certain bits of the truth as they were, and that doesn't always serve the book to
Right.
its best. You have to be prepared to experiment with things, to give something to a different character that didn't happen to them.
Right.
You have to let it go so that you can tell the deeper truth. I will say, you want the truth, but you actually want the deeper truth, and you want to tell it to its best advantage. And you have to let go of what actually happened and just use it in a new way. It's like, I imagine, an actor when they're playing a part, they'll draw on things, but they're making something new in the end
Right. Right.
that will
Yeah.
come from them, but they're making something new.
I
And
love that.
then if you're going from novels to memoirs, you can change things quite a lot. You can put characters together. You can put 3 or 4 people together and make them into one in certain circumstances, because that might be just easier for the story, easier for the reader. A problem with memoirs is that there might be loads and loads of people who actually all perform the same dramatic function. So you might have to streamline that or take a lot of them out.
Right.
If there were 3 people at an event, that might be more cumbersome for the reader than if you make it just 2.
Right. Yeah.
Things like that, you can make those adjustments and there's still truth. And very few people will pull you up and say, "But wait a minute, at that wedding, at that table, there were 10 people around the table and you focused on just 2. Well, you can't focus on 10 people. It's
Yeah.
not like the beginning of Pulp Fiction starts with absolutely loads of people all demonstrating what they're like by what they say when they're given their code names.
Yeah.
Mr. Pink doesn't want to be Mr. Pink, and nobody does actually. And that's great if you can see everybody and experience them. But on the page, if you try that, it's just confusion. It's really difficult for the reader to understand. So it's usually better to streamline things, reduce the number of characters, and also get a feeling for events. Sometimes you can miss out steps, but it won't matter. But
Right.
it
Yeah.
will actually keep things going along more smoothly. It'll be easier for the reader to understand the significance and so on. So you actually do a lot of massaging of your material in a memoir, but it's still the truth.
Yeah. Don't let the reality get in the way of the truth.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Oh, yes. Put that on a t-shirt.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. So, what advice would you have for, because I remember the Nail Your Novel, what
Mm.
advice would you have for writers who are just getting into it and haven't written yet? And even in terms of deciding what to write, or any advice that you think will probably be useful for those just at the beginning of their career?
Well, don't be self-conscious. Don't worry about people reading it. There's a lot of difference between what any writer writes as the start of their idea and what comes out in the end. Don't think it has to be perfect. There'll be some bits that you'll do really well instinctively from the start. There'll be loads of other things that you have to learn, but that doesn't matter because we're all like that. And you just acquire the craft and the knowledge of how to do things as you go along. But get started. If you're feeling self-conscious by sort of sitting down at your dining table and starting to write, try writing somewhere else. Sit in a cafe where there's loads of buzz around you, no one's looking at you, and you're in an alien place, and you might never go there again and feel silly. Just start writing, or dictate something if that makes you feel easier, helps you get the ideas going. But once you've got something written, it's easier to continue, and it's easier to do something with it. And then the other thing you need to do is read loads. Read the things that you really enjoy and notice what you enjoy about them. Be a real noticer. That's what writers are. That's how they develop original things and original stories, because they notice something and they think, I want to do something with that. And they just kind of fall in love with that thing, and they have to keep pursuing it. So let yourself fall in love with things and let yourself write about them. Notice what really affects you about things you read, the kinds of characters you like, a line that someone writes. Notice how the order of words make you feel a particular thing and how delightful it was. And just reread things. I'm a real rereader. I take ages to write a book because I'll get trapped in a paragraph. I would just want to go back and over and over and over it and think, I love that. I want more of that flavor again and again. But that is how I learned what I wanted to write and how to write, because I just noticed what worked on me. So notice what works on you and then see how it's done. Then go and explore writing blogs, because they're great for just picking out little things. You don't have to go to books yet if you don't really know what you're looking for, but just look for blogs that will say how to make a character make you feel warm inside or something. Just go and look for that and explore it. And then what you might find is that chimes with something you've read that you like, that you thought, I'd like to do that. Build it bit by bit. You'll build the book bit by bit, and you'll build your writing style and your writing craft bit by bit as well.
Oh my God, that is awesome advice. Thank you. Can you please let my listeners know where they can find you online?
You can find me on my website, which is rozmorris.org, and I'm RozMorris, and then it's .org. You can also find me on Twitter, but I'm Roz_Morris. There is another Roz Morris who doesn't have the underline, and if you contact her, she probably won't bother to reply, because she won't know why you're contacting her.
Awesome, Roz. Thanks for hanging out with me today.
Thanks so much, Mark. That was great fun.
Okay, this was such a fun interview. It was so great to listen back to it. I kind of like the fact that I know it's horrible for my guests, but I think I talked to Roz back in December, and I'm releasing this in March. But I love the fact that I get to relearn and rehab that experience, because I don't remember a lot of the specific details, and so that's really good for me. I get the benefit of the initial chat that we record, and then when I listen back to it. So again, that is why I am not going to have someone else edit this podcast. I need to listen to it. I need to relearn, because I could probably listen to this again and again and again and learn something new every single time from the wisdom that Roz shares. So let's get into some of this. So just a reminder, Her new book dropped, and it worked out really interestingly. It dropped on March 5th, 2026, and this episode's coming out on March 6th. So her new book, Turn Right at the Rainbow, A Diary of Househunting, Happenstance, and Home. Actually, it sounds like a really great book. I forgot to ask if it was going to be available in audio because I'm a really slow reader. This would be a great one to listen to when I'm flying to Ireland next week. But anyways, I'll probably want to check it out and go see if I can find it on Kobo. In any case, that book just dropped, so if you want to check it out, it sounds like a blast. But reflections. So early in the podcast, Roz said to find out what's there and to make other people see it too. And that's our job as writers, about writing and story. And it's just such a brilliant way that she captured that. Later, towards the end of the interview, she says writers are noticers. And she suggests this is so valuable. She suggests to notice what works on you as a reader. I love that. Just recently, and I shared this as a note on Substack, I'm listening to the audiobook of Frederick Bach's My Friends. And there's a line about art and what art is. And it just spoke to me. And Bachman has this way, and I know it's translated from Swedish into English, but, Bachman, the initial Bachman terminology is got to be solid, and then the translator's got to be pretty solid too. But just beautiful. Reminds me of the way I reacted to John Irving. There'd be passages in John Irving's books, and A Prayer for Owen Meany is still my favorite John Irving novel, one of my favorite novels of all time. There are such beautiful passages in Irving's writing that I stop and I just reread just to appreciate the beauty of the language. And Bachman does that for me too. And that's what Roz is telling us. Notice things in the things you're reading. Notice what works on you. What made me want to go back and read that again? What was the beauty and the profoundness of the statement? And is that something that you can apply for your writing? So that a fantastic reflection. Now, I also love the idea of how Roz talks about massaging details when she's writing a memoir. So editing the reality to simplify it in some way. So, for example, focusing, like she said in the example, on only 2 people at the table where there were really 10 there, but you're really focusing on the 2 because on the page it's just too difficult. And to get to the essence of what you want to do, that's where the focus is. Or other elements that may confuse or cloud the story. So, yeah, okay, these 10 things happened in this order. Bam, 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 bam. That's exactly how it happened. But I'm going to cut out these 4 and this one over here, and I'm going to shorten this one here so I can tell the same story that gets to the same point, that tells the same truth without clouding it with all the other stuff that's not important. It reminded me, there's a great character in the Dairy Girls, and I can't remember the guy's name, but he's a comedian, and he's the guy who just goes on, and he tells a story, and he just rambles, and he keeps coming back in various episodes. It's only 3 seasons, but what a great show. But he keeps coming back, and he just keeps going. He's telling a story, and he gets off on these sidetracks, very much like if you've seen Grandpa Simpson telling a story, I walked back in the day, we wore an onion on our belt because that was the style at the time. And he's sidetracked from the entire initial point of the story he was trying to tell. But that's what can happen in a memoir when you do the blow by blow. You're like, and then, we wore onions on our belt or this other thing. And then that reminds me of when I saw him last week and he had the hemorrhoids and he talked about it, blah, blah. And you go on and on and on. You're like, well, that's not pertinent to what I'm trying to share here, the truth of what's happening here. It may be interesting backstory, but it's not completely related. And learning to cut those things, even in a memoir, can help get the reader the intent of what the truth you want them to see, not the noise. I love that so much. What a great advice for memoir. And then the final thing, because, when I chat with Roz, I get inspired in so many different ways. But the concept of really delving into different characters and understanding, and this goes back to fiction now, the concept of delving into different characters and understanding what perspective would be for them. And you can do that in memoir too, but I'm thinking of it more in fiction because that's how I write. And the idea of of getting into the characters. And this is something that I remember doing in theater. You need to be in the character. What's their motivation? Why is this character reacting differently to this exact same thing? I love that. And it reminds me of advice I received from Dennis Hamill, a New York, Brooklyn writer, phenomenal writer. Too bad most of his books are out of print, but I just love his stuff too. He gave me advice when I was asking for him insights into New York City when I was working on A Canadian Werewolf in New York. I wanted insights into what it would be like, what the setting would be like, just prior to rush hour near Battery Park. Because I knew he was a journalist and a novelist there, and I loved him, and I reached out and I just said, hey, because I'd only been in New York once by the time I'd started working on that story. And he said, he gave me some tips, but then he gave me writing advice, and I still hold it true to this day. I even incorporated that into the novel by creating Dennis Hamill as a mentor to Michael Andrews, my writer, in the story, because I love doing those little Easter egg tidbits as well. But he said, I'm doing the thing that the guy from Dairy Girls did, where I'm going off and meandering, and because that's the way that this dysfunctional brain works, that this neurodivergent brain works potentially, is I'm constantly jumping all over the place. And that's why I sometimes interrupt people. I get so excited about the thing I'm going to lose if I don't say it. So anyways, back to the story. Dennis Hamill's advice was to go for a walk with one of your characters. And to have a look at a place you're probably familiar with. You're walking in your neighborhood, but you're walking with your character and you're listening to what the character notices. How they describe the same things you've always seen, and how is their perspective different than yours. And that's one of the ways to remind yourself that different people have different perspectives, different experiences that they bring to every single thing they encounter, and they're not all going to react the way you react. And that is advice I still take to heart, and it was so cool to hear Roz talking about that as well. Such powerful advice from great writers like Roz Morris and Dennis Hamill. Well, I hope you enjoyed this meandering reflection. I hope you enjoyed the interview and the entire episode. Thank you so much for listening. You being there listening means the world to me. Thank you for being there. Appreciate the comments. I love to hear what you're thinking on, what you're reflecting on as you're listening to the episodes. But wow, my voice I haven't had to pause and clear my throat and cut in oh my God, several minutes now. Could it be I'm slowly getting better? Oh, that would be fun. Wouldn't that be jolly good? Okay, enough from me. I do appreciate you listening. Thank you so much. I would appreciate leaving, if you left a review, an honest review, wherever you listen to podcasts, or better yet, share this episode or any episode that you found valuable with someone that you think would get some value from it, because that helps them. It helps you because you feel good about sharing cool things. And of course, it helps me. And maybe it helps future listeners of the podcast discover it. But thanks for listening. Until next week and next episode. Now, next week's episode, I will be on a plane when it releases. I'll be on a plane on my way to Ireland. So I'm going to have to get my caca together. That's French, by the way. I'm going to have to get my stuff together. My merde, that's really French, together and get that episode edited and published for when I am on my way to Ireland. And then I'm going to have to do the following week's episode for the 20th as well. I'm going to have to get 2 episodes. Will I be doing a reflection from the road? Now, the 19th, I'm at a conference, and Liz is going to be with me. So it's not like I get back from the conference, Liz is going to want to do stuff with me. So it's not like, I'm in a hotel room alone. So maybe, just maybe, there'll be a reflections from the road. Because I'm pretty confident I don't have my crap together enough to Yeah, I'm a walking thesaurus here. Caca, married, crap, shit, all the, oops, I said a bad word. All the things, all the words. Look at me. And I'm sidetracking again. Have you noticed? This is like the 15th time I've done that. So until next week and next episode, which I will probably be producing prior to flying to Ireland, this is, as always, the ever-rambling Mark Leslie Lefebvre. Or should I say the ever-rambling, ever-reflective, ever-rambling. Yeah, that's it. Okay, not going to cut this out. I'm just going to go with this. Au naturel. This is Mark Leslie Lefebvre wishing you great writing and good stark reflections. Okay, so where's the little button to turn this off? Ah, there it is.
Thank you for listening to the Stark Reflections podcast. You can find show notes for each episode at starkreflections.ca.
The music for this podcast, Laser Groove, was composed and produced by Kevin MacLeod. Check out more of Kevin's great music at incomptech.com.